Right, so let's get going. Good morning. My name is Guy Newey, and I am the chief exec at the Energy Systems Catapult. And a huge warm welcome to what is going to be a roller coaster of an hour and a half, looking at local energy and how we can help get local energy projects built. Right, next slide, please. Hopefully lots of you are familiar with the Energy Systems Catapult. So we are an innovation business. Our job is to help innovators, be that SMEs, be that local authorities trying to crack net zero, be those big companies trying to take advantage of the transition. Our job is to help them. We do that both in supporting them, but also about thinking about the design of the future energy system. And as I'm sure lots of you on this call will be aware, and for those of you who are new to the Energy Systems Catapult, we do a lot of work with both local authorities and with public sector buildings, thinking about their decarbonisation journey. How can we make it as easy as possible? Next slide. This series of webinars that we're doing is all part of talking about our Net Zero Go platform. So this is something we have built with the very kind support of UKRI through Innovate UK and the department, which shall not be called DESNES, the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. With their support, we built this platform, which is there to help local authorities and their partners make it as easy as possible for them to transition. And it is a one-stop shop for all the information that they need. And we're going to talk about one aspect of it today, but I'd really strongly encourage you to register and get on the site and see what lots of wonderful stuff is there. Next slide. Today, we're going to talk about a particular aspect of some of the work we've done related to Net Zero Go. We all know that one of the biggest challenges for getting local energy projects off the ground is getting the business cases done. Strategic outline business case, etc. And the part of work we've been doing in partnerships with an organisation called Local Partnerships has been about building up those templates in line with the Treasury's 5-case model. And we're going to give you a kind of quick overview today of what they can do, plus some of the brilliant case studies of people who've done the hard yards across the country trying to get projects off the ground, as it were. And then at the end, we're going to just give a bit of an update on where we are with local area energy planning as well. So a lot to pack in. Next slide, please. So just to stress, this is the equivalent of one of those high intensity training sessions, which was all the rage about a year ago. We're trying to cram as much information as possible in the next hour and a half. And we make no apologies. So we've got the speakers with relatively short periods to give a quick hit of information about what they're doing. I encourage you to use the chat, and then the speakers will respond in the chat after their sessions, etc. But we've got a great lineup today. First of all, Laura and Vicky are going to talk about some of the work we've done on the templates. Then we're going to hear from Tonia from Birmingham, Andrew from West Yorkshire. Next slide, please. Eddie from the Northwest Net Zero Hub, Katie from Yorkshire Local Economic Partnership. This is Enterprise Partnership. This is all about learning from others and understanding where they've had projects and what the different aspects they've learned. And then at the end, we will get to Anna Stegman from the Energy Systems Catapult, who's going to give an update on local area energy planning. Right, as I say, put your questions in the chat as we go through. They'll get picked up by the Net Zero Go team or from the speakers or from others. There's a great audience here. It is being recorded and will be made available afterwards. But I'm going to start over. I'm going to hand over to Laura from Energy Systems Catapult. Laura, over to you.
Thank you, Guy. Next slide, please, Tabitha. So as part of Net Zero Go, we've developed a number of best practice guides to help you find content within the platform and tools as well that are relevant to a particular theme, a project or an activity. So I'll be using some screenshots of the system so that we're not flying around the screen, and also you can use them as references later on. So as Guy said, Net Zero Go is aiming to be the one-stop shop for local authorities by bringing together all the relevant resources on net zero and energy projects into one place. By creating these curated journeys and best practice guides, we're trying to signpost to what's most relevant to try and reduce some of that initial research and development time, as we know that for local authority officers, this can take up precious time. We'd be really grateful to get your feedback in the forum on the platform on what might be missing from any of these guides, or if you have any resources you currently use to build your business cases. It may be that we have additional content in Net Zero Go that hasn't been signposted, or we can plan to develop content where it doesn't already exist through research. Next slide, please. So once you're logged into Net Zero Go, this is your home screen, and you can access the best practice guides in the top bar through the best practice tab that's highlighted there. These by no means represent the breadth of knowledge and tools available through Net Zero Go, but they act as a starting point to enable you to quickly and easily find resources. There's so much to explore, and we're always adding to the platform as we move forward. You can also access tools via the Projects and Tools tab, which is also highlighted on the screen, and further content through the Knowledge tab at the top of the page. Next slide, please. This guide that's on your screen now is called Types of Business Case and the Development Process, and this provides an overview of 5 types of business case to consider when you're developing a local energy project. It's important to note that each local authority will have its own internal decision-making process, and you should be consulting this when you're developing business cases to ensure that the appropriate strategic context has been determined. The contents for this will take you to each of the sections, or you can scroll down through the guide, and we also have other recommended articles and content to the right of the screen there as well. Next slide, please. So this is one of the sections if you scroll down through the guide, and you can see that for the medium to large scale projects, a 3-stage project business case is recommended. The strategic outline case is the first of these stages that you would go through when you're developing a business case, and this is the scoping phase. The purpose of this stage is to reaffirm the strategic context for the project, because this may have changed if some time has elapsed since the strategic assessment was undertaken as part of your local authority. So this is in order to make the case for the change and to determine the preferred way forward. The guide details the development activities included as part of this business case, and you can see in the graph on screen how each of the dimensions in the 5-case model are completed at this stage of the business case development. So you're not completing all of them entirely. This is just the first step in that entire process. There is a link included in the guide for more information within Net Zero Go on how to structure the 5 cases within a strategic outline case template and what should be addressed. And this is also the case for the other stages of business case that are in this guide. As you go down, you would reach into the outline business case and then the full business case as well. Next slide, please. We also have a guide on the system that we've developed called Developing the Initial Business Case for Your Local Energy Project, and this has been structured around the 5-case model. So this framework is recommended by Treasury, but it isn't always commonly recognised in local authorities. So you can find out more about what the 5-case model is before you read through the guide, and there's a link at the top for you to do that. This guide links to content and tools within Net Zero Go that can support you in the writing of your business case. This will be developed and added to over the phases of research that we're conducting. And with the next quarter of research, we're going to be focusing on the economic and the financial cases. We're also due to be adding a number of checklists to assist in helping you step through the activities and the decisions that are required during the development process to make it as easy as possible for you to go through that. Next slide, please. If you scroll down in this guide, you are taken through each of the 5 cases with the relevant resources and tools in Net Zero Go that are directly linked. These pop up into another window so that you can go back to your original place and make it as easy as possible. I'll take you through a couple that are relevant to our theme of research for today, which is the strategic and commercial cases. Next slide, please. So the first link on the list is the benefits framework. This takes you to our benefits tool, which is an example of a tool we've developed as part of Net Zero Go and will help you define the benefits that your project is looking to achieve. The content of this tool is based on the benefits framework that you can see on the screen now. These are themed into different areas of focus and reflect the benefits that have been identified in our case study library. So these are not exhaustive, but they represent resilience, equity, net zero, financial, health and well-being, and economic aspects as well. Next slide, please. The guide also signposts to the local area energy planning guidance, which provides a detailed description of the end-to-end process of creating a LEAP, which you may have heard of, and my colleague Anna will be discussing this later in the agenda as well. Next slide. We worked with local partnerships to develop a lot of the content in the commercial case section, including a procurement framework finder. And we also have a legal checklist for solar PV, which was created by Sharp Pritchard, and we'll soon be able to add a legal checklist for district heating as well once it's available. Next slide, please. The best practice procurement guide in Net Zero Go provides a review of the steps that should be carried out to ensure a successful procurement process. This includes assessing the market before you develop a business case so that you can gain a good overview of the current state of the technology or service that you're hoping to procure. Some example approaches are also included in the guide for you to look at. Next slide, please. Over the past 3 months, we've been researching more about the requirements of local authorities in relation to the strategic and commercial cases of the 5 case model, as I mentioned. Capability and capacity in local authorities has shifted, but so has the ambition and the scale of the challenge. So in relative terms, the capacity that local authorities have has stayed the same. It's really important for you to be building a pipeline of projects if capacity allows. Energy literacy amongst local authority decision makers and senior stakeholders also remains a barrier to the increased delivery of local energy projects. Interdepartmental collaboration and strong project management are key factors for successful delivery, and we've seen that that's more so than in IRR in projects as well. There is a requirement to secure external support and expertise, and this impacts internal knowledge retention. So there is a need to become an intelligent customer, and Net Zero Go has lots of resources to enable you to do that. The principles and structure of the 5 case model is seen as a really valuable framework for project development, even if it's outsourced, but it's essential that you sustain momentum. This is a long process, and if we ensure any technical elements are communicated in a way that highlight the key benefits and strategic fit to decision makers, then it can be used in its best way possible. The key value lies in the discussions and building trust with the decision makers, which is the process that you go through when you're developing a business case. Next, please. Alongside this, we've also been working with local partnerships to develop 3 strategic outline case templates. These are focused on solar PV, heat networks, and retrofitting local authority assets. And we've also developed an outline business case template as well. We've recognised in our research that existing guidance on business cases isn't targeted at local authorities and is usually relevant to high value projects. So in addition to the guidance that we have on Net Zero Go, these templates are being made available to ensure robustness. The templates were validated with a group of local authorities and the Net Zero hubs as well, and we're keen to start distributing them so that we can test their ease of use and also build up a database of example content like objectives and risks so that other local authorities can share and benefit from this information. This is a snapshot. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of one of the strategic outline case templates, where you can see that there is embedded guidance, checklists, and suggested text depending on the project type. These documents are thorough, but they can be scaled back to summary sections as a high-level document if momentum is required. Experience has shown that a strategic outline case is best developed through a number of workshops involving key stakeholders at critical phases of a project's development. And green boxes within the guidance propose potential workshop activities that may facilitate the collation of information that you require. Final slide, please. So we'll be letting users know when the templates are available to download in Net Zero Go, and that should be imminently. And we'll be conducting further research on each of the dimensions of the 5 case model. So we hope to be in touch with you in the future. There's the link again to register, and it will be available in the chat. Thank you very much.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Laura. We hear more over and over and again is the importance of developing a good business case, and help getting that is one of the key things to do. So we really hope that is going to what we've produced, what's been developed here is going to help there. But if we haven't got it right, feedback. This is for everyone on the call to use. This is about being relevant to you. Right, we're now going to get into some of the kind of case study presentations. So Vicky Kingston's from Local Partnerships, who've been doing lots of the hard work on that, and she's going to talk about how the templates have been applied to a particular example. Vicky, over to you.
Perfect, thank you. So as Guy said, my name is Vicky Kingston. I'm Senior Strategy Director for Climate within Local Partnerships. For those who aren't aware of Local Partnerships, we are a public sector consultancy co-owned by the Local Government Association, Treasury and the Welsh Government. Next slide, please. So as Laura said, Local Partnerships were commissioned by the Catapult to create templates to support the development of business cases related to the delivery of energy projects. And there are 3 different case study templates that have been created that will be available on Net Zero Go. I will talk today about the use of one of those templates with the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. But just for those who are less familiar, the purpose of a strategic outline case is ultimately to make the case for change, to agree the strategic context for a project, to determine objectives, existing arrangements and business needs, and ultimately to create a list of options that are available for delivery, to identify critical success factors that help you to appraise those options, and ultimately to determine a preferred way forward. So the purpose of the business case templates that we've created, and specifically the ones for the strategic outline case, are to provide a framework for structured thinking and assurance in line with HM Treasury's Green Book 5-case model and the Better Business Case guidance. And as Laura mentioned, it provides a number of suggestions for things like workshops that could be delivered to engage and to generate text amongst a project group or steering group, and suggested text that can be tailored relevant to your project. Next slide, please. So a slight build on one of the diagrams that Laura had in her slide pack, but for those that are less familiar with the methodology set out by Treasury, this includes 5 cases, and hopefully you have heard of these before. So the strategic case, economic, commercial, financial case and management case. So within the template, there are guidance on each of these 5 areas or dimensions, which they are referred to by Treasury. The level of analysis across the cases differs depending on the type of business case you're developing. So as you can see from the diagram on your right-hand side, there is an expectation that all of the cases are thoroughly explored at both outline business case and full business case, slightly less so at the strategic outline case. There is much more of an emphasis on the kind of strategic, economic and commercial. And what I'll seek to do today is to talk you through some of the work that I've done with the London Borough of Tower Hamlets and the focus on developing the strategic and economic components of their business case. Next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of background, the Barkentine Heat and Power Company was established in March 2000 through a 25-year private finance initiative, or PFI, between Tower Hamlets and EDF Energy. The Energy Service Company, or ESCO, was set up to design, build and finance the heat network within Tower Hamlets. Now, the PFI is due to finish in October 2025 and is currently based on a fossil fuel system. The council are therefore developing a strategic outline case to assess options for the delivery of heat to existing customers when these contracts come to an end, alongside opportunities to decarbonise and expand the existing system. So the next few slides will take you through some of the workshop sessions that I've run with the council to gather information from the project to populate the strategic outline case, specifically for the strategic and economic cases. And the benefit of me doing this was that I was developing the template for the heat network strategic outline case whilst actually developing a client-based business case at the same time. So I was able to actively test components of it and the practical application with the council. Next slide, please. So developing the strategic case. Following the identification of a project team and a steering group for the project, I worked with the project team to understand what their drivers were, both for the development and continued operation of the Barkentine Heat Network. And what you'll see is a series of drivers that we talked the council through to understand the hierarchy within the project team and also the steering group. So what was really incentivising them, both previously to set up the network and for its continued operation. Next slide, please. We then spent some time understanding how the operation of the network aligned with the national and local policy context. And what you will see within the guides is that the national context has been pre-populated in many instances so that you can take that information and tailor it according to your project and project needs. Next slide, please. By going through these two exercises, this helped to understand and inform discussions at the steering group to develop the council's strategic objective and their critical success factors for the project. And what you can see below is critical success factors which align with each of the 5 cases that have been identified. So you will see examples of this within the template itself. Next slide, please. We then work with the project team to understand the existing arrangements and business need in order to determine the potential scope of service required. So breaking down the existing service so that it was clear to articulate to those that were going to be making decisions about its future existence and what that might need to consist of. Next slide, please. We then ran workshops to identify and review benefits, constraints, dependencies, and risks associated with the project. And once these were drafted, they were presented to the steering group to review and challenge and incorporate within the strategic case. So what you'll see within the guidance is that we have pre-populated benefits, constraints and dependencies and provided a risk template for you to start to use for your own projects. Next slide, please. So whilst drafting the strategic case, we also sought to identify and develop a long list of options available to Tower Hamlets to ensure the delivery of public value. And this is what forms the economic case. So we use something called the options framework filter, which is a Treasury endorsed approach to help identify the options available to the council in relation to what services were required, the potential service delivery options, who might provide those services, potential timings and funding options for delivery of the preferred way forward. So this really provides you with a framework to help structure your thinking and the thinking of the project team as you are working through components within the business case. Next slide, please. So initially we held a workshop with the steering group to identify options and then to appraise them against the strategic objective and the critical success factors that had been identified earlier within the strategic case. This was problematic due to the size of the group and their understanding of the process. It was also quite a cumbersome process, very time consuming, and consequently the project team met on a number of occasions to draft components, which was subsequently presented to the steering group for comment and challenge. So I think whilst you will have identified workshops within the document itself, it's understanding how you use and interpret those within your own teams to make sure that they can work for you. And I think that would depend on the level of knowledge, expertise and the time that you have available from the individuals that are working with you and forming part of that decision-making process. Next slide, please. Following the options appraisal, we were able to discount options, identify a preferred way forward, and carry forward other options for further consideration. So this, in essence, left us with a RAG rating for each of the 5 dimensions and a preferred way forward for the project. Next slide, please. This was replicated across each of the 5 areas or dimensions in order to identify a preferred way forward. And this is blank for a reason. I've taken this out due to the sensitivity of the analysis that we've gone through, but this just gives you an indication of what that final summary might look like, identifying the preferred way forward. Next slide, please. And then on to the final slide, lessons learnt. So I don't know why some of these things have been emboldened, but we'll go with that. So identifying a project team to lead the development of the content of the business case and suitable individuals to form a steering group for consultation and agreement of content is absolutely critical to the success of the project. And that may have to evolve over time. Within Tower Hamlets, we've had a number of changes within staffing. And so making sure that you identify an SRO, a senior responsible officer, to ensure a clear and accountable decision-making process is important, and also making sure that you have the time to spend with individuals to get them up to speed. It may also be necessary to bring in specialist expertise to support with the facilitation and development of content, depending on capacity and capability within the authority. But don't underestimate how much time is required at the start of this process to ensure that everyone is engaged, understanding of the project requirements and the business case development process. Many councils are unfamiliar with Green Book and maybe unfamiliar, and people within the teams may be unfamiliar with the project itself. So, for example, procurement and legal may be less familiar with something like the Barkentine Heat Network project. But it's really important to engage with a wide range of stakeholders to preempt future challenge. So finally, the template is intended to help guide you through a process. It's not intended to be followed by the letter if it's not right for you. If your project isn't of sufficient value, so as Laura mentioned, this should be kind of medium to large projects, then use it as guidance only. It can help provide a structured framework for thinking and a way of engaging with others around you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Vicky. That was excellent. As I probably should have said at the start, as well as the kind of general templates we produce, there's specific templates around heat networks, related to the work that Vicky was just talking about, solar PV and commercial retrofits as well, which are the areas where we get where we know there's kind of more opportunity than anywhere else, which is why we focused on there first. And of course, one of the other questions that we get when people are thinking about projects is how do we ensure sustainability through the business cases? And Tonia from Birmingham City Council is going to talk through this really important issue and what she and the team there at Birmingham have learned through this process. Tonia, over to you.
Thanks very much. So I feel like I'm being slightly controversial here, but next slide, please. So what happened was I was working on an outline business case for a solar project and was just kind of feeling a bit conflicted about the economic case and just how money focused. I mean, obviously, money is so important when we're putting projects together, but as I say here, there's no money on a dead planet. So how do we get those environmental considerations into our plans and also kind of maybe weight them a bit higher than the money if possible? So I know that is controversial, and we're obviously still at really early stages in understanding good project appraisal, let alone trying to flex the system to include environmental considerations. But I do feel that we've almost got to bring it to the forefront, because otherwise people aren't experts in this field. They'll miss things. We've really got to spell it out for them. So I'm proposing a sixth case for the government, or alternatively, we change the economic case into a donut economics case. And if anybody hasn't heard of donut economics, it's the way of measuring everything that we do based on the capacity of the planet to sustain our activities, and also kind of how we can still have a decent life, so that everybody isn't disadvantaged by what we're doing. So I've put a little picture on the slide there, and it's about this safe and just space for humanity. So, how can we steer all of our projects appraisals to get us to that point? So, yeah, that's what I want to kind of like put a plea out there for. So next slide, please. So yeah, I just thought it was really important to look at each stage of what we're doing in a project, so the design, build, funding and operational phases, and to look at some of these things, so embodied carbon, energy use, biodiversity and nature recovery, water, circular economy and carbon offsetting. So for me, when I was looking at the solar project, you know, one of the things that comes up a lot when I was speaking to people was, well, you know, end of life recycling for solar panels. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, we need a solution for this. So one of the things that I was looking at, so in Birmingham City Council, we have an environment and sustainability assessment that goes on every cabinet report. So that's everything that goes to cabinet member or to our cabinet for decision making. And I know that the West Midlands Combined Authority has an inclusive growth framework, which they use for their decision making, which is based on donut economics. And people like Cornwall Council, they have a net zero decision wheel, which is also based on donut economics. And I want to kind of bring it in at a really early stage, because one of the things I was feeling is that the ESAs that maybe we do kind of happen towards the end of that project formulation, at the point where you think you've got everything together and you've got enough to go to cabinet, whereas actually I think we need to be putting it right at the beginning of the process. So yeah, I'm just thinking, you know, how do we kind of really rebalance what we're doing to take it all just away from the finance side. So I've just got a few slides. So next slide, please. So I've just, you know, I was just off the top of my head putting some stuff down because I think we really have to scaffold people's learning around this, because for a lot of people, as Vicky was saying, this is new to them. So, you know, if you've got somebody out in building consultancy, they probably haven't done carbon literacy training, you know, they might not be up to speed on what's available. So we just have to kind of, I think, really provide a lot of resources. And Laura's put in the chat about some of the resources that Net Zero Go have. So next slide, please. So really important that we kind of look at biodiversity and nature recovery, because although it's not obviously economic, it really kind of fits into all the things we were talking earlier about resilience, and it's really difficult to think about heat islands and, you know, flooding and all that sort of, you know, how do we make our societies more resilient? And it is about water and it's about biodiversity and nature. Okay, next slide, please. And then just circular economy. And controversially, I've put in there about carbon offsetting because it is something that people are talking about, but I think you've got to be really clear about the extent of that, and that it's got to be, I think it needs to be kind of verified and, you know, proper, not just we'll bung in a few trees and that'll be all right. So I guess my plea is, how can we get this into our project appraisals at an early stage? How can we kind of support and train people so that this becomes kind of business as usual? And I think for me as well, the other thing is, in the future, and I don't think it will be too long before local authorities will need to comply with the Task Force for Climate Related Financial Disclosures, and maybe also the Task Force for Nature Related Financial Disclosures. And I think within 10 years, we'll all be expected to carbon footprint. So we've really got to get a handle of all these things at the project appraisal and design stage, so that later on, when we're asked to monitor our carbon emissions, we know exactly what we're doing and exactly how we're monitoring it. Thank you.
Brilliant, Tonia, and thanks so much for reminding us of the wider context, because the danger is with these kind of things, you get sucked into kind of how do you do the plans, etc. And it's just, you know, what does this all mean? Can I just take one quick follow-up question, if I can, while I've got you? When you're talking to councillors and making decisions, like how much is this now at a stage where this is instinctive or business as usual now, or how much of it is still, God, we've got to go back to the drawing board and explain why biodiversity challenges are important, or anything like that? Well, how are you finding that in Birmingham?
I think it's a really mixed bag. We've got some councillors and some officers who are completely signed up to the cause, and who in fact challenge if we haven't done enough. But I would say that there are others for whom this is new, and they really struggle with the economics, and kind of making that balance. So I think it is a really mixed bag, and I think we just need more training and awareness raising for society as a whole. You know.
Yeah, exactly. It reflects the wider challenges we've got in society about embedding all of this. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Any questions for Tonia, please pop them in the chats. A few comments already, and some links to some materials on Net Zero Go, which will be relevant. Andrew Norman from West Yorkshire Combined Authority. He's going to talk about kind of some of the packages that are available to local authorities who are thinking about developing business cases and how to use them. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Guy. Hi, my name's Andrew Norman. I'm the Senior Project Appraisal Manager at the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. I work in the Portfolio Management and Appraisal team, and it's my team that appraise the projects and programmes that we have coming through the Combined Authority for investment. Next slide, please. And again, and I think we'll just skip this one just to keep things to time, but there's a bit of an agenda there, but I'll run through it. So a quick overview of the Combined Authority, West Yorkshire Combined Authority. It's established in 2014. We're a mayoral combined authority from February 21. We've got Tracy Brabin now is on there. We cover the geography of Bradford, Coaldale, Kirtlees, Leeds and Wakefield districts. And our project and project collaborations extend as far as York Council, also North Yorkshire districts for some of our TCF projects. And some other district councils for some of our skills programmes. The CA has developed its own independent assurance framework. That first began in 2015 for the growth deal, but it's been expanded and updated annually, and it applies to all schemes that we manage through the Combined Authority and for any partners who bid for funding that's controlled by the Combined Authority, including our local authority partners. Next slide, please. So just quickly on the assurance framework, our local assurance framework, it's managed by the Portfolio Management Appraisal team, where I sit, where I work. We're soon to be the Strategic Portfolio Office, so we're having a bit of a change and some of our functions are being expanded, which is quite exciting. As mentioned, it was developed in 2015, and it was also required to be updated to release funding for the Mayoral Combined Authority in 2021. So the assurance framework ensures that the necessary systems and processes are in place to manage funding effectively, and decisions over funding, how funding is spent, are proper, transparent, and deliver value for money and deliver on our strategic economic framework, ambitions, and our objectives as an organisation. It's also transparent for our promoters in terms of how they take projects through the assurance frameworks. So it's kind of a first starting point for our promoters in terms of understanding and supporting them in terms of bringing project business cases through the assurance framework. It's continuously reviewed and updated to meet the needs of new funding opportunities or funders, also the government guidelines, taking into account new best practice that's learned through team training, and also the needs of scheme promoters, users of the assurance framework. We took it through a very in-depth update in 2021 and 2022, which involved promoters as well. And that also included updating our templates, which I'll come on to. We're now currently undertaking a peer review with other MCAs to understand how their assurance frameworks work, how their processes work for business case appraisal and approval, and we'll be making further changes through the rest of the year. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of an overview of our assurance process. The portion at the top there is what we call the train. And this helps promoters to understand the different stages in the assurance framework, where the SOC comes in, the ABC, FBC, so the standard 3-stage process. Also the business justification case process, which is a 1-stage process, which you can see sort of towards the top there, the long bar there, business justification case. And also the strategic assessment stage, which comes in earlier, and how that feeds into closure of projects and also evaluation of projects, and where key decision points come in. I'll run through some of those areas later, but something just to note We do have something called an approval to proceed process. So some of our projects, when they come in at FBC stage or at PJC stage, there are outstanding elements which we would like them to have in place before we give them approval to move into delivery. The approval to proceed process is a quick process where we can condition through the FBC or the BJC process and then discharge conditions through the approval to proceed process. So it allows us to provide flexibility to promoters, particularly through the procurement stages of a project delivery. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of an overview, and there are some animations. I don't know whether they'll work, but with the change to these slides, if you just click once, let's see if that works. Great. Okay, so this is the structure of the PMA team, and I'm not going to go into depth, but just to show how we support our promoters essentially in bringing their business cases through and developing their business cases. So the main role of the PMA is to guide business cases through the assurance process, applying the regulations and guidance of the assurance framework, and to support scheme promoters to build robust business cases and project tools to take them into delivery. The assurance team, so the area that's highlighted in green here, comprised of portfolio managers, or sometimes referred to as business partners, provide ongoing support to team promoters to provide quality business case submissions and to guide promoters through the assurance process. Next animation, which is the middle section here, we have support provided through a modelling and economic appraisal via the appraisal specification report process, which I'll come on to later. And then next one is the project and programme appraisal team, which is undertaken at each decision point. So we come in, appraise the projects. Hopefully it's a constructive process which aims to support promoters to develop more robust and viable business cases, which are then taken through to the next stages. Next slide, please. So there's been quite a lot of talk about templates previously. So we have a suite of templates. They're all outlined on the left here. Each template has a guidance document which alongside it. We have a number of other templates to support partners as well. Some of those are carbon impact assessment, which we require for all business cases, data protection impact assessment, equality impact assessment, cost and funding summary, financial profiles, logic model templates. We have a monitoring evaluation team who support promoters in that area. Project initiation document to support the management case in particular, and also risk registers. And all the templates are made accessible for scheme promoters to access and download. Next slide, please. So just in terms of business case and how we decide which pathway to follow, proportionality is applied to business cases and their progression through the assurance framework based on the risk of the project, the complexity, the scheme value, if it's potentially controversial or it has a complex procurement method. It's on a case-by-case basis, and it is generally determined at the strategic assessment stages. The single-stage business justification case approach has been developed. It's for transport and non-transport projects that are below 2 million in value, low complexity, low risk, or not novel or contentious. But it still needs to go through a strategic assessment process and also closure later. And we may require conditions to be discharged through an approval to proceed process. On the business case itself helps us to understand and influence and shape the project scope and direction, helps decision makers to understand the key issues to avoid committing resources to schemes that should not proceed, and it allows informed decision making to be undertaken to understand the intended impacts of schemes, but also the unintended impacts of schemes and how they relate to the strategic case. We follow the Treasury's 5-case dimension model and the 5-case models listed below, but I won't go through those in detail. There are some bonus slides at the end of my presentation, which I won't run through, but they give some more detail if you review the slide pack. Next slide, please. So in terms of business case training, all appraisal managers are trained to practitioner level in APMG Better Business Case, focusing on robust business cases and following the principles of the Treasury 5-case model. We've also provided training to foundation level for a number of our CA program and project managers. And we've provided assurance framework overview and business case training sessions, which will come on to combine authority officers and external promoters. Training sessions have also been provided on our carbon impact assessment, appraisal specification report process, and also monitoring and evaluation process. We've also provided follow-up FAQ sessions to respond to queries from the scheme promoters, which have come out of the training sessions, and to aid in helpful discussion and understanding. And we've also had additional training provided by our framework support consultant, who's Arcadis. Next slide, please. So just listing here are the different assurance framework training sessions that we've undertaken. There's an example slide there, introduction slide, and we also have the videos of the training sessions. So they're available for promoters to review again at the leisure, and also for new staff who are training up. So we've had 13 sessions so far, about 100 people per session. We've had about over 1,000 participants so far, and they've been well received, and there's more training to come, including non-transport ASRs, which we are developing. Next slide, please. And this is just an overview of the FAQ sessions that we've undertaken, and we're preparing an FAQ webpage, so more support and resources for our partners. Next slide, please. This is a list of the additional training we've had from our framework support partner, listed on the left-hand side. They've been developed. The session has been developed on feedback from PMA officers, and to sort of focus on areas which often require strengthening business cases. And we've had separate sessions on each of the separate dimensions of the 5-case model. Next slide, please. Just to mention appraisal specification reports. This is something we use with promoters to essentially allow them to set out their methodology for appraisal of the economic and environmental and social impacts of the scheme, and sets out the scope of the modelling, assumptions made, etc. And we require those to be prepared and agreed with the combined authority, with the PMA, prior to starting any of the benefits appraisal, and that helps smooth the process later. So it's a mandatory product, and we're working up a non-transport ASR because we have historically been quite transport focused. Next slide, please. I think I've got 2 last slides on key considerations for business case development. So these are kind of lessons learned almost. The first one, to see the business case development as something that runs alongside the development of the projects and the submission of the ABC or FBC, and to make sure that comes in at the right stage when the project is ready for that approval. So rather than the templates driving the development of the project, it's something that runs alongside. And as Vicky said earlier, it can be used to support a structured way of thinking and of developing projects. So ensure that the early development, the SOC stage, identifies the key issues to be addressed, rather than sort of predetermining what the solution might be, how those could be addressed, how those issues, and what the alignment is with the partner funding, the objectives, and the critical success factors. Focus on making the case for change, developing the critical success factors, developing the options framework before actually using it to appraise options, and then using it to set the preferred way forward. And that will all ensure that the objectives flow into the option development, through into the long list and shortlisting process, and then into the M&E and benefits realisation strategy, and that the realisation of the outputs and the outcomes of the project are more likely to be realised. Ensure the submission is developed to the correct level, as mentioned before, but OBC in particular is a crucial development stage. And we've kind of coined this phrase here that at the end of OBC, we should have a deliverable preferred option that's supported by a viable business case where risks are understood and public and stakeholder support can be evidenced. And there's a lot that sits behind that in terms of how you actually achieve that. Next slide, please. And this is essentially the key considerations at FBC stage or BJC stage when you're ready to move into delivery. I won't list out all of those because I think I'm out of time, but ensure it's at the right stage and ready to be delivered, essentially. So thanks very much.
Brilliant, thanks, Andrew, and apologies for cutting you off, but there's a lot to get through. Really interesting to hear about the processes that you guys have introduced. Right, now I'm going to hand over to Eddie Boyd from the Northwest Net Zero Hub. Eddie is going to talk about some of the work done on decarbonising public sector buildings and templates they've introduced. Eddie, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Guy. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you this morning and talk about some of the work that the Northwest Hub gets involved in. Okay, Tabitha, let's go. Yeah. So We get involved in a lot of things with the requests from public sector to help. And one of the things that we had identified was that being able to support a techno-economic study or business case was something that was in demand. So this piece of work here was done alongside Manchester University NHS Trust, and we had EY coming in to help us with the project. So it was essentially looking at a set of odd buildings to see how these could be formed into a decarbonisation project, and trying to help them get to a business case for that piece of work. Next slide, please. So in order to get a full understanding of it, there was a wee bit of work to do on assessing the options that were available to build a business case. And you'll see there that there's a number of things that had to be thought about. And obviously we were promoting a fabric first approach in order to look at the buildings and get the best return out of it. However, understanding within the evaluation of this that there may be different options, and there might be a more critical path in order to get to the best value to meet with net zero carbon targets. Next slide, please. So there was a couple of stages of work within this. There was quite a bit of information to pull together in order to inform the options, and EY put it together on 4 scenarios that could be applied to the buildings, and obviously these would have different aspects to them within the business case. And as you can see there was a number of options that were put there for the upgrading of the buildings, and some of these may be better than others, but we selected these out of the best of the options and took forward scenario 4 as the most appropriate. Next slide, please. So we had done an assessment on all the scenarios before listing this as something that would give the best opportunities for the trust, and all of these options help them towards the net zero target. Some of these didn't stack up very well initially, and it was easy to discount them, but we had started to move towards what would be the best opportunities, either for the buildings themselves or for the NHS Trust to look at as an estate portfolio. Next slide, please. But when we did start to look at the business case, it became quite clear that there wouldn't be a good payback on many or any of the opportunities within the buildings. And we started to look at where the best emissions approach could be, along with, and this was part of the difficulty with it, because the NHS doesn't have a lot of freedom or wriggle room in terms of where they can get money and financing to look at the type of options that could be put into the thinking about how to pay for this. Next slide, please. So EY promoted an option for us to think about what would be the social value attached to investing in the measures that we talked about. They use this here as an example. A car is quite a simple one, and it's easy to generate the opportunity and the benefits directly or indirectly that come from making that change. A bit more complicated is start to put it into buildings, because buildings are so complex and very different. But this was the ethos of how looking at the green premium could help the business case forward. Next slide, please. So building that case, there was an opportunity to assess all the options. We then applied a green premium to that, and started then to look at financial options. There was absolutely no payback on any of the sites, but the aggregated approach offered better value. Final slide, please. So in terms of the project work, there was quite a good exercise to go through. to look at scoping and working out how these retrofit options could come together. The application of scenario modelling certainly helped to reduce what would be the best paths to put forward for investment. And as you can see here, it wasn't a large portfolio. We did look at everything separately to see what we could get the best out of it. And it wasn't a huge investment, but if we started to factor in what the additional benefits would be, that would make quite a difference to the overall case for it. And that's the project. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Eddie, thanks so much. Just one quick question. What was the most surprising bit? I was really interested how you brought out those green benefits and actually, you know, links some of the points that were made earlier in the presentations from Tonia in particular. What was the bit that was either the toughest or the most surprising in the process you went through?
I think the least, if I go the other way, the least surprising was that none of them added up. So none of them would pay back. Heat pumps never going to be lining anyone's pockets. But I think the most surprising thing was the amount of, if we can monetize the value that goes along with the added benefits, then that makes the case quite significantly different.
Okay, great.
All right.
Yeah, no, that wider point, and until we get all these incentives aligned, so it's actually cheaper, more cost effective to do the right thing, as it were. This is a problem for people operating in the space we're talking about today, but it's a problem across society. So that's part of the reason we at the Catapult spend a lot of time arguing for better policy in that area. Right, so thanks to Eddie. I'm now going to hand over to Katie from York and North Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership. She is going to talk about some of the kind of strategic considerations you need to think about when you're thinking about a local area energy plan. Katie, over to you.
Hi there. Next slide, please, Tabitha. So yes, I'm from the York and North Yorkshire Local Enterprise Partnership area. I'm also part of the North Eastern Yorkshire Net Zero hubs. So our hub is set up slightly different to the others. So I'm kind of locally based in York and North Yorkshire, but part of that Net Zero hub ecosystem. So I've put together a few sort of slides thinking about the strategic case for local area energy plans, and I've touched on the commercial case as well, because I know that's something that the Net Zero Go team have been working on. So the strategic case for us for local area energy plans comes from a background where we had demand from the local authorities in our patch to nail down with all of our climate emergency declarations what it is that we should actually be doing in the area. Where should the councils be prioritising their resources, their very limited resources at the time, and they sort of handed that question over to the Local Enterprise Partnership and said, can you guys lead on this and give us some rationale? So we collaboratively with West Yorkshire Combined Authority commissioned a carbon abatements pathways study, and that gave us really robust technical evidence on, for example, how many heat pumps we needed to install per year between now and 2040, how many homes would be on a district heat network, and it came accompanied with 90 policy recommendations to make all of these changes happen across power, industry, transport, land use, and heat and buildings. We took that through a extensive stakeholder engagement to come up with our route map to carbon negative, and this is a blend of those sort of strategic priorities that have come from the carbon abatements pathways study, all the way through to action plans that are for the first 5 years of the route map that's co-owned. So actions within there are not things for the LEP to do. Very few of them the LEP are leading on. They're actions that our stakeholders have said, this needs happening and we're going to do it, and we'll support this route map. And then the local area energy plans were the work with carbon abatements pathways was really great at giving you how much we need to do and when we need to do it, but it didn't give us where. And York and North Yorkshire is a very big area with lots of differences, as I'm sure everyone will recognise in their own spaces as well. So we really needed that spatial granularity, and that's kind of how we got to realising that local area energy plans were kind of the next step for a lot of our work. Next slide, please. So thinking about the objective, we needed that spatially relevant plan. We needed it to be driven by data, and we needed it to complement that action-led work from that we developed so far in the route map. And as with all things, we were looking for the most cost-effective route to net zero. That was the brief from day one from our local authorities. We need to know where best to spend our money for the biggest impact. And it was quite clear to us through the development process of the route map how this local area energy plan would fit in with other regional policies and plans. So I mentioned the policy recommendations in the carbon abatement pathways research. 16 of the 90 can be partially or fully addressed by local area energy planning. Energy system decarbonisation, as you can see in the diagram on the left here, was one of 3 key pillars underpinning the route map, and other colleagues in my team are working on a circular economy strategy and, well, refreshing our existing circular economy strategy, and a natural capital strategy as well. So all of those will work together, but covering different parts of our decarbonisation journey. And the data that was inputted to the local area energy plans, as well as sort of the hard data on assets and grid infrastructure, it was also based on existing climate change policies in the local authorities, based on the distribution future energy scenarios at Northern Power Grid, and on drafts of local plans as well. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, it was based on all of these plans, but that was off quite a lot of different key stakeholders. So we had all of these different organisations collaborating together. I brought this slide up to sort of echo the importance that was in one of the earlier presentations of making sure all of your steering group is on the same page to start with and knows the expectations of the work, but also to flag that this incredibly complex picture has got slightly easier to deal with in the last few months. We're now, North Yorkshire County Council is no more and has absorbed all of those people on the bottom half of this diagram into one massive mega North Yorkshire Council. So we're working with the same number of people, the same area, but fewer legislative sort of boundaries to work across, which is quite exciting now. Next slide, please. I've just brought this up to show that the strategic case, as we put it together when we were developing the project, was in constant review. So this is the process by which we were developing the local area energy plans, and you can see that we've got our steering group that I brought up earlier, pulling together PESEL analysis of non-technical factors for success. And also we were looking at the peer challenge session where we took the draft outputs to experts in fields adjacent to the energy system. So we had Transport for the North, community development departments in the councils, citizens advice, ecology experts. We wanted to make sure that the leaps were going to complement, not conflict with, those other important local priorities. It also shows on here with the NGN citizen panel, so it's Northern Gas Network citizen panel, the limited public engagement of the plans. So this is something I just wanted to come on to when thinking about both the strategic and the commercial case, is your funder and how you're going to deliver this piece of work. Can we move on to the next one, please? So the bulk of the funding for our local area energy plans came from the UK Community Renewal Fund. As you can see here, has got a big sort of gap where York would be. York weren't as successful in their bid for the UK Community Renewal Fund, but actually saw that there was benefit in coming together with this funded piece of work and managed to secure resource in-house. So that made the value for money argument much stronger with the all the pre-work that we'd done as York and North Yorkshire, and also the savings we'd made with the economies of scale and the sort of stripped back nature that we took with this. The original timeline for the UK Community Renewal Fund was 6 months delivery. Anyone that's come across LEAPs before knows that you cannot do a full LEAP in 6 months. But as I mentioned, we'd done a decent chunk of the background work, that vision setting, the ambition setting, and the stakeholder engagement prior to this. And we just cut our coat according to our cloth with cash and with time resources. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we were constrained by the timing and with the funding peculiarities. So we had to spend a certain percentage in priority areas. So we really could only have that 330k in the bid. So we just limited buying in the technical support. We didn't buy in any further support from the consultant we ended up going with, which was Energy Systems Catapult. This timeline also constrained how we could procure this piece of work. So we'd worked with Energy Systems Catapult before on developing the local energy asset representation, which is another sort of building block of local area energy plans. And so given we only had 6 weeks between the bid going in and needing to start the programme, that's why we had to go down that route. And I would recommend that if you've got more time and you're not constrained by this, putting more effort into making sure you are really clear about all of these cases that we're talking through is really important. It's also worth noting, as these timelines change, the risk profile changes. Different things become higher or lower risk as you move along. I'll just pop onto the last 2 slides. So what next? So we've identified through this process that it was not perfect, and so we have been continuing to work in-house on overcoming the shortcomings, and that particularly on governance and on public engagement. On the governance side of things, as I mentioned, the councils were undergoing local government reorganisation, and in a few months' time we'll have a York and North Yorkshire mayoral combined authority. So it's simultaneously the best and the worst time to develop a LEAP. It's the best time because you're able to input these plans into exciting new things like new local plans. We've got a workshop in a week actually with all of our local planners across North Yorkshire to discuss climate change and how we can use the LEAPs to inform future planning. But it's also the worst time because as you're developing it, you want to have a really clear direction of where you're going. And if you don't have a structure that it's going to sit in yet, it's really difficult to have those important things like a senior responsible officer that's going to have continuity for the whole thing. They keep moving around. And I'll just take us on to the last slide for lessons learned, if that's okay. I'm aware we're running tight on time. So as I mentioned, developing the LEAPs during a period of change can have big opportunities, but also makes it really difficult to set your end goals and for them not to move drastically, especially when you're working with lots of different stakeholders whose priorities and structures are moving around as well. It was also over the end of Rio ED1 and Rio ED2 for the network companies as well. Seeking funding to cover development costs can accelerate the development, but it comes with the limitations, as I mentioned earlier. We need to do more on the social process. It underpins the deliverability, and as we were talking about earlier, it's really resource intensive, and we were not able to resource it at that time and are still struggling to do so. So we know it's a limitation we need to overcome. And making the case for change as a trailblazer requires commitment and a willingness to get stuff wrong, something that's not always allowed in local government. We've been working from a local enterprise partnership slightly outside of local council structures. We're going to be absorbed into that much more formal combined authority structure. It's expected in November, so we're going to have to start kind of nailing down our processes in a much more coherent way, as you've just seen from West Yorkshire Combined Authority. And yeah, I've got a couple of key links that I can pop in the chat on my final slide. Thanks very much.
Right, that's brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic, Katie, and delighted to work with you. And you know, this is something that everyone is learning about. So we squeezed the time for questions, as I worried we might. So what I really encourage our speakers to do is to dive into the chat. I can see that's happening already. I can tell that's happening because I can barely keep up with the various different things shooting across my screen. So please, if you're able to, the speakers and the Net Zero Go team, to dive in there. There was an interesting one earlier from Councillor Holyrood about retrofitting council housing, which will be interested on the views on there. Right, so perfect segue into, we talked about local area energy planning and this big set of activity that we do at the Catapult, but I'm going to hand over to Anna from the Energy System Catapult team to talk about the kind of state of play with local area energy planning. We saw a great example of a council and an area where we're trailblazing, learning the lessons, etc. But we're trying to come together. Of this idea has been kicking around for 4 or 5 years. Lots of people trying it. Where is it now? What's the latest state of play? Anna, over to you.
Thanks, Guy. So yeah, hi everybody. Obviously, I used to be part of the Net Zero Go team, so it's great to be back and involved in one of the webinars and see so many of you on the call. But yes, like Guy said, I'm now part of the team responsible for leading on our local area energy plans. And recently I've been doing a piece of work trying to investigate and collate evidence of the value that local area energy planning has been providing for areas. But also, of course, look at areas where we think needs improvement and help kind of define some recommendations for what more we think is needed and what kind of needs to happen next to take it to the next level and help scale it up. So what I'd like to do with, if we can have the next slide, please, Tabitha. Yeah, so I'm going to start off with kind of brief introduction to local area energy planning. I know we've got quite a varied audience here, so just kind of going to skip through that quite quickly, but just to kind of inform you all a bit more about local area energy planning. And then really, I'd like to get your feedback on some of the sort of recommendations that we are proposing, and then use that to help us kind of develop a bit more detail around these. And we're then intending to take that kind of to our main stakeholders, you know, in government or other local authorities and others across the sector to help drive that forward. So if we go to the next slide, please. So for those that maybe haven't come across local area energy planning before, the kind of main outcomes that you get from doing a LEAP are that fundamentally shows the kind of what, where, how many and when you need to do certain projects across various components of the energy system, so that all the different stakeholders involved can kind of see they can kind of see this high level plan and kind of base and progress activity in order to deliver net zero. So it's generally a timeline to 2050 and all the different kind of project types that might need to happen along that timeline to meet that goal. So one of the kind of main outcomes from the LEAP is the pathway, which gives you the sequence for all those kind of different project types and outlines where the priority projects are. We also provide this kind of plan on the page, which is quite a visual way where you can kind of just at a glance get an impression of basically the scale that's needed across the different local areas to be able to reach net zero. We also kind of provide some different visualizations. So there's kind of focus zones where they show the different priority projects and where they are across the local area. And alongside this, of course, there's all the data side of it. There's the evidence that then gives the breakdown of the investment that's needed to decarbonise the local area. And again, this is really just to give that headline figure to show just how great this challenge is, I think. But also, you know, demonstrate the opportunity there. And it's worth noting as well that, you know, as Katie already kind of mentioned, there's a whole range of stakeholders involved in developing the local area energy plan. And by having that engagement throughout the process, the idea is that you get that buy-in across different levels. So you get the kind of senior political buy-in, but also, you know, you're involving the kind of community energy groups, social housing providers, you know, others like that who are going to be responsible for probably implementing some of the projects. So once you've got their buy-in creating the plan, the idea is that then when we take it to the next phase to implement it, you've kind of got the right people lined up to take it forward. So we could have the next slide, please. So this just shows kind of some of the more visual outputs. So this example is showing how different heating options can be identified for different housing types, or just building types actually. So kind of this first one shows you more granular detail of where heat networks might be more suitable compared to electrification. The second one kind of gives you the whole area snapshot and showing how the different building types relate and are more suitable for various heating technologies. So again, it just helps kind of show different stakeholders potentially what they might be interested in different ways. And then that third image there shows how we can highlight different kind of focus zones, which might help the local authority to target different innovation projects, or just a general area for deployment, or potentially kind of do some community engagement if there's a certain, you know, type of project that they might want to undertake with local residents, then how they can communicate and target communications to that area. So that, I mean, that's a very, very quick overview, but that's just some of the example outputs. If we could go to the next one, please. So while doing this work, we've been doing a few interviews with local authorities that have had a LEAP, not necessarily by us, I have to add. Other consultancies also are out there delivering them now. But these are just some of the kind of the areas where they found most impact and value from doing a LEAP. I won't read them all out, but just kind of pulling out a couple of the main themes. I think the main one that Katie also mentioned there was about aligning plans across different departments within local authorities, or across local authorities in a region. It's been really helpful to kind of do that engagement and make sure it kind of pulls in all the relevant other plans that local authorities are mandated to deliver. Another kind of main theme, I think, is the kind of greater understanding of an area. So I think some feedback was, you know, it really helped them to understand what they had within their area to work with. And some of the analysis actually showed that they were performing better in some areas than others than they initially thought. So it meant that they were able to kind of prioritise certain projects more effectively than they might have done had they not had that data and evidence and to use. And I think the main one is, well, the really important one really is that they've been able to access government funding for projects which they wouldn't have otherwise thought they would have been able to be eligible for, by having this data and this insight into the local area. And therefore the LEAP has meant they've been successful in getting further funding for projects. So that's just kind of a few snapshots of really great feedback we've heard. Can I have the next slide, please, Tabitha? So very briefly, this is kind of the main process that you would follow to create the plan. As Katie said, 6 months, very quick turnaround to deliver it in. Generally, it's a sort of 12-month process generally. And it follows these 7 stages. So first stage is preparing it. That's getting, you know, all the outline, defining the boundaries, the right stakeholders and things like that. Secondly, stakeholder engagement. So, I mean, this is an ongoing process throughout the whole journey. But this kind of stage 2 is when you would start it. You'd start bringing all the right people together and understanding a bit more about their roles in the process. You'd then go to stage 3, which is map, and that's mapping your current local area. So that's bringing together housing data, energy system data, transport data, all relevant kind of things that the local area holds, and bringing that together in one place. Then you would model kind of future scenarios. So you might have a target date for net zero of 2050, you might have a target date of 2045, and you can compare how that, you know, having those different target dates might impact the system. The next step is then to analyze those different scenario results and do that against kind of wider factors. So looking at kind of some of the socioeconomic factors as well as part of the analysis, and aligning that with what the priorities are for the local area. And from that, you're then able to identify the main sequence or the main kind of pathway that's able to meet these in the most effective way. So that's where you identify your priority projects and kind of those focus zones and things like that. And then finally create the plan. So I will be able to, for those that want more information, we do have a kind of more in-depth guidance document, which I'll be able to share, or my colleague on the call will be able to share the link in the chat, where you can find out more information as well about it. So hopefully that's given you a flavour about what local area energy planning is all about. But if we could go to the next slide, please. This is a bit of a kind of background as to why we think it's important that we're doing this sort of state of the nation review at the moment now. Because basically we've seen there's been a rapid increase in the number of areas that are interested in procuring a LEAP or undertaking a LEAP. And there's also been a lot more LEAP providers coming up, and not only on the consultancy side, but also people that are developing new tools and models to help kind of do those different scenarios and things like that. So of course it's excellent to see this kind of market growing, but there are potentially some risks. So if you could just have the next slide, please. So, you know, although we're seeing more and more people and more providers interested, there's a kind of wide range of approaches being used. There's various reasons for this, you know, budget, time, etc. So yeah, we're just seeing a range of approaches, and obviously a patchwork of areas with a LEAP. Different areas have prioritised net zero, this kind of activity in different ways. And there's a risk there that we think there might be, you know, huge missed opportunities from this approach. You know, being able to kind of aggregate up different local air energy plans to get a regional view, get some kind of more strategic national insights to help inform potential funding programs or encouraging investment at scale, are just kind of some of those missed opportunities that might happen if we don't act now. So to try and overcome these risks, we are proposing some recommendations. So if we go to the next slide. So probably unsurprisingly, our kind of key message really is that we would like to see LEAPs mandated across the UK. Obviously, this is not particularly new. There are other organisations that have been saying this for a while as well, but clearly it's taking time to come into effect. So although this is our main kind of headline recommendation, we are also proposing some sort of smaller steps that could be put in place, potentially faster, that would help us get to that outcome. So if we could go to the first one, or go to the next slide, please. So the three are, we would like to endorse using consistent guidance for local area energy planning across the market. We would like to see support for a national and regional technical advisory function, and we'd like to mandate doing the baseline activity for local area energy systems. So that is just providing all local areas with information on their energy system as it is today. So basically going from stage 1 to 3 of the guidance. So if we could go, I know we're running out of time a bit, but if we could go to the next slide, we've just got a few polls where I'd like to get some feedback from you on what you think of these suggestions. So this first one about endorsing the guidance and why we think this is important. So the main reason really is to get that consistency, and from having a consistent approach, you know, that helps multiple things to aggregate those local plans up into more regional or national view, see the kind of wider scale for investment, help kind of engagement with stakeholders as well, who might be operating at different scales to local authorities, for example, the network organisations. So yeah, if the polls should be coming up on your screen. I can't see it on mine, but I hope it's on other people's screens. Or if it's not on your,
there's definitely some polls coming up.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be great to just get your feedback. The first one is just a rating of kind of what your awareness is of LEAP at the moment, and the second one is just kind of open text of what would you like to kind of know more about, or how could you find out more, what would help you understand more. Just in the interest of time, if we could move to the next one, please, Tabitha. So our next proposal is about government supporting a national or regional technical advisory function. So, you know, we know local authorities are under pressure, they have capability issues in this area. So the aim of this function would be to kind of help provide guidance, share learning, but also, you know, by being involved in multiple local areas and things like that, we'd also be able to sorry, the word cloud has come up now, so I was just getting distracted by that. But also, you know, provide upskilling and things like that for people within local authorities. And we would hope that it would help unlock kind of funding opportunities as well by doing it at scale and having that kind of more regional view. Okay, that's brilliant. I'm seeing some things coming in now. Thank you. And then very quickly, if we go to the third one, this was about doing stages 1 to 3 of our guidance. So basically getting the stakeholders involved, getting all the data together that helps the local area understand the kind of net zero energy system in their area, but doesn't provide the full strategic net zero plan to 2050. It will just give you an idea of what's there now. And from that, it's possible to kind of identify some low regret project options. So it'd be great to have your feedback on whether you think doing an activity like that would be more viable for you at the moment, or yeah, if you feel like this would help, or if there's other blockers that this wouldn't actually help get around. Yeah,
Anna, we're gonna have to stop there.
Yeah, that's it. That is the last slide. So,
okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
Thanks very much to Anna. Huge thanks to all our speakers. It's been an absolutely, I told you it was going to be a roller coaster at the start, and it has. We have rattled through a huge amount of stuff. All of the recording, the slides will be made available both on Net Zero Go, but also in emails to participants. So if you've missed out on anything, I really strongly encourage you. The chat will no doubt continue after this session, but we hope that the templates that we've been working on and produced are going to help you move forward on delivering some of your projects. If you have any questions, any follow-ups, please get in touch with the Net Zero team. If you're a UK local authority, please register with Net Zero Go. It is really there to help you and has loads of brilliant resources to get you along the way. Right, I'll wrap up there because it's now 12 o'clock and no doubt you've got other things to go towards. Thanks very much to all our speakers and have a great rest of the day. Well done.